Excellent. So we'll just jump straight into our interview questions. So the perfect starting question is, so that the young people listening can get to know you, please could you tell us about your career journey and your current role?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hi everyone who's watching and listening everywhere. Morning. Hope you're all doing good today. But yeah, so yeah, my name's Luke Frank. So I've been a TV presenter and content creator for a good few years now, since I kind of found it at university of what I wanted to do. But at school, I was a pretty shy kid actually, so it's kind of weird that I've ended up like doing lots of stuff on camera, which is kind of strange. But we can talk about that. But yeah, like I went through school and I enjoyed school. I never quite found what I wanted to do at school, like exactly. Like I liked lots of different subjects, but there wasn't like one thing that I was, really found was like totally me. But I used to get on with everyone well. So that was something that kind of I think helped in my career now. Anyway, I ended up going to uni, which isn't something you have to do to be in the media industry necessarily at all. But for me, that's what I chose. I didn't love my subject at uni, but they had a radio station at uni that you could go and do for free. So you could go and just volunteer as like one of the kind of clubs at uni. And I went and did some radio shows, and I was terrible, obviously, because everyone who starts anything they've never done before is rubbish. So my first shows that I was doing, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. And I realized that I loved it so much that I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of make content in some way, but how could I possibly do that as a job? Like, how do you even begin to do that? So anyway, started doing that at uni, and then I kind of recorded all the stuff that I'd done, all the shows that I made, and I entered like competition, which was across lots of different universities, and I came second. And one of the sponsors was Radio 1, and so they kind of got you in, and I met a few people that way. And then slowly over a long time, I went and worked in London at a different radio station. It was a kids station, and we used to get sent out to interview a lot of like the Disney stars and like random people who were releasing films. Like there was even Kermit the Frog was one of my first interviews, which is a Muppet frog puppet thing, if you don't know who Kermit the Frog is. And so I started interviewing and had lots of footage, and I ended up sending something to CBBC, and then I did a show called Scrambled on ITV for a long time, and then lots of stuff with pop music bands at kind of the Brit Awards. I did behind the scenes of the X Factor and The Voice, and did lots of stuff with pop acts. And now I've gone a slightly different route recently into the world of kind of video games and metaverse stuff, which I'm sure you've probably heard the word, which we'll talk about. So that's my short journey, but we'll dive into that and explain it a little bit more in the interview, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Thanks for starting us off there. And interesting to know that you were a shy sort of in high school, and then this is something you've gone on to do. That's really cool. So as you said, the metaverse. You host the podcast, Welcome to the Metaverse. Can you tell us about this and how you started the podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So this metaverse word for like adults is, they're like, oh my days, we just discovered this thing where like people go and hang out in like virtual worlds. For probably everyone your age and even younger, it's just what you've grown up doing. When you were younger, maybe Roblox, maybe Fortnite, maybe other kind of games as well. But for kind of adults, this is like a new thing. So when I grew up, like the internet was just kind of kicking off. So I sort of saw Twitter and YouTube and YouTubers become a thing. Like YouTubers weren't a thing when I was your age. So I was doing kind of telly stuff. And then I saw this kind of new wave happen where like people were making videos from their bedroom and uploading them, putting them on YouTube, and they were getting quite a lot of views. And some people were getting, lots of followers, and they were like early YouTubers, which you probably know people like Casper Lee and like Alfie Days and Zoella and this kind of first era of YouTubers. And at the time, I was in TV land, and lots of people were like looking at these YouTubers being like, oh, this is silly, this is like ridiculous, like they'll never kind of compete with like these big TV shows that we're all making and that we've always made for like 20 years, and it was done a certain way. And I was watching these YouTubers going, I don't know, like a lot of people are watching these YouTubers. I think they're going to be quite a big deal. Like I think like being on YouTube is going to be a thing. And it was interesting because the sort of professional people I was around were like, no, this is nonsense. I was like, I'm not sure. I think it's good. And we all know the story that happened after that. YouTubers became a massive deal, and some of the most well-known people and with the biggest followings in the world, Mr. Beast, hit 100 million followers not that long ago. And these are the most famous and well-known people. Anyway, so that was a big shift that I watched. Now the next shift that is coming is this kind of shift into virtual worlds. So, hanging out with your friends in places like Roblox or Fortnite, or playing video games. And lots of brands are really interested in that because they can now create like worlds where you can go and hang out there. So Roblox, I'm sure is probably a bit young for a lot of you, but Nike have a whole world there called Nike Land, where you can go and kind of hang out and play and stuff like that. So that's like a big new shift. I saw that coming. I thought the same thing's happening again here, where lots of people are being like, this is nonsense and ridiculous. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not. So I started a podcast all about that, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. Lots of stuff in that world. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for just diving into what metaverse means as well. So what skills do you think you needed prior to running the podcast?
Yeah, so if we talk about the podcast specifically, so podcasting is really interesting because it's on the surface quite simple to do, and maybe you've had a go at making your own show. Maybe you've got an idea that you'd quite like to do, something you want to talk about with your friends, and go for it if you want to do it. I mean, in its most basic form, a podcast is just recording an amount of audio. It might be half an hour, it might be 15 minutes, whatever. And you can choose your interest or your topic that you're interested in. And maybe that's something with your friends. Maybe you just want to do it for fun, in which case, great, just do it, because why not? Like, it's a fun thing to do. Or maybe you want to think about it more as like a bit of a career, or something that maybe you'd like to become like a business in the future. So there's two different paths. If you want to do it for fun, just go and experiment, go and get your ideas out there, try and make something. And you don't need like a really expensive mic. There's some great tools that we'll talk about later that can help. If you've got just like headphones like these or something similar, you can actually make it sound really good. There's kind of free editing software that you can use to kind of get your show down, and even free platform that you can just go and publish it, so it'll end up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google and all the others. So it's actually a really like straightforward thing to do. If you want to start making a podcast and potentially turn it into a bit more of a business, then you have to think a little bit harder. And it's quite interesting then, because I think you then need something specific, like a niche topic, something you're really interested in. So if there's maybe an unusual sport that you love, or you love playing video games, or something that isn't maybe covered so much but people are looking for, maybe you can do a show around that topic. I'd say like the hardest thing about doing a podcast is being consistent and doing it every week, or however many times you want to do it. There's a good stat that I think 90% of podcasts don't get past 6 episodes, and of the ones that do, 90% of those don't get past 20 episodes. So if you can get past 20 episodes of a podcast of whatever your idea is, whether it's with your friends or whether it's something that you're doing on your own, you are in like the top 1% of people, because most people quit. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I think that's probably the hardest thing about doing a podcast. It's kind of simple on the surface, but actually to keep doing it all the time and to grow an audience is kind of the hardest part from it, but it's definitely doable. So yeah.
Awesome. That actually leads us very nicely onto our next question, which is, what elements go into running a podcast that people don't think about? What can get you beyond that those 6 episodes?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we talked about there's like a bit of technical stuff, like you need to obviously record your voice somehow, but you can do that pretty simply on pretty normal headphones. And then you probably need to edit that. So you maybe want to take out the bits where you might sort of mess up a little bit or stumble, or the bits that are less interesting. And then you want to publish it. And that's kind of like the technical bit of it. And that's quite simple, and you can learn that pretty quickly. So the harder bits that people don't think about so much is, especially if you want to grow it into something, is what can you do? What is your subject that people are probably searching for, or is going to catch their attention, but maybe there's not loads of content about it already. So when we were talking about how the metaverse came to be, and I was talking about the YouTuber thing when that started, I saw that this trend is coming where this metaverse thing and the amount of people that play Roblox and Fortnite and other kind of virtual world games like that is growing so fast, but not many people are talking about it. So I was like, that's a great topic to do, because I know people are going to be looking for it, but they just haven't realized it yet. So yeah, think about is there something that you know that makes you unique, or something you know more than about other people, or something that you think people will be searching for, like a new trend or something interesting that's happening? Because then you will probably get found. People are going to organically find you. People were searching for metaverse for me because they're like, what is this thing? And they found my podcast, and then lots of people came, and I was like, okay, that was kind of the plan all along, right? So that's what a lot of people don't think about. We talked about the consistency side of it, and then also reaching out. The other ways you can grow a podcast if you want to turn it into something like a business is to get guests on and reach out and ask people. So I just emailed lots of people. Some people said no at the beginning because I didn't have any shows, so I made some myself and then kind of showed them that. And then once you start getting good guests, so I don't know if you're going to do football podcast or video games podcast, like reach out to people in that world. When you get a few good ones, then it's easy to get the next people because they're like, oh, you had that person on who we know, or it's cool. And then slowly it kind of grows like that. So and they also share it with their audience. You can kind of do your own work and then use their audiences to kind of share it and grow it. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. If you want to do a podcast, if you don't, then that's not very good advice, but
no, thank you for that, Luke. Next question would be, what inspires you about the metaverse and the internet, and how do you see these things changing or expanding in the future from now?
Yeah, so that's a big question. So I like to go back to kind of YouTube and think about how much that's changed the world, right? Now how much TV do I watch? Like not loads, like a bit. Maybe there's some shows, maybe like Traitors or something like that kind of everybody watches and talks about. But generally, I spend a lot of time watching YouTube, right? Because it's got all the stuff that I'm interested in. You can just go and find out whatever you want. So that kind of changed how we do everything, and the internet changed everything, right? So how we communicate with each other. You'll have grown up with it, with WhatsApp, and if you're on social media, different social media, and how you consume content. It kind of changed everything. But all of that at the minute is scrolling on a screen, right? Like, and hopefully you don't do it too much, but like going through TikTok videos or whatever it is, and that's fine. But what is happening now is kind of a more immersive internet. So if it's video games and you're hanging out and you're socializing with your friends in these worlds and you're buying stuff for your avatar, maybe it's a drop or a fashion drop or something, or maybe you've even been to like a virtual gig or something like that. If not you, then people younger than you are doing it, going to see Ariana Grande or whoever in Fortnite, or Travis Scott, or Calvin Harris just did a big virtual gig where people could watch all over the world. And we're starting to see it become more immersive, so you can explore these worlds in a 3D way rather than just scrolling on kind of Instagram or TikTok 2D. You're beginning to be able to explore these worlds. And then even more like new technology that's been around for a while, but it's coming, things like VR. If anyone has played with like a Meta Quest 2 headset, it's kind of basic and needs to get better, but it's quite cool because you are fully immersed. And we'll start to see AR stuff, augmented reality. So Apple are probably going to release something soon, which is quite crazy. So a headset where you're in the physical world, you can see everything around you, the stuff is on top of it. So there's a cool game, it's called Hado, and it's a physical game. So like if you ever play dodgeball, you know how that works. You're in the gym or whatever, and you have a softball and you throw it at teams. Hado is, this might be getting complicated, but it's an augmented reality game. So you put a headset on, you're still in a physical world, you have your team and a team opposite you, but you're not throwing a physical ball, you are throwing like lightning bolts, and you have a shield, which is like a video game shield. So you're kind of dodging stuff, but it's both levels. And so we're starting to see like a more immersive world like this. And that's kind of the next big phase. If YouTube changed it once, this next phase is changing it again. And it's probably hopefully good for you to recognize that, because when you're thinking about creating content and moving into the business world, lots of companies are beginning to explore this, or at a cool, interesting time for all of this stuff.
Wow, this all sounds really exciting. I don't think I know enough about the metaverse world, so I'm really glad I'm here and talking with you. No, that's brilliant. And I'm sure all of our young people and schools are enjoying hearing too. Thank you. So in saying this, talking about virtual worlds, how do you think the metaverse will affect people's careers as our young people are coming out of school and entering the business world, as you've just said?
Yeah. Good question. And also, actually, I'll mention about like education, because that's a really big thing that's happening with these immersive technologies. And it's very, very early, but I was speaking to a company who are, they create like a curriculum in VR. They're called Victory XR, if anyone's interested. And so, for example, they have a science class, right? And it was about the human body. And you can, they will send you a headset, and your teacher has one, and so you can be anywhere in the world. And this is quite cool for people who maybe don't have access to great schools, who maybe live not in the UK or elsewhere. And you can basically go and join your teacher in VR. And the video they showed me, it was like a human body, a skeleton, and they were learning about the heart. So the teacher went and actually got the heart out of the skeleton, out of the body, and then expanded it to 6 feet tall, because it was just a 3D model. So they just kind of pulled it really large, and then everyone got inside the heart, and the teacher was pointing out like the ventricles and stuff like that, and you were inside it. And so stuff like that's kind of cool for learning. Like when you think about your lessons, and I'm sure it's great, but like to be able to add another layer of that to certain things, or to go back in time, and like if you're learning about World War II or whatever, to go back and see some of the locations and things like that, or in history, or wherever it is an interesting thing. So that's kind of cool. We're talking about when you go into your jobs, you'll probably underestimate how much you know if you've grown up playing video games, or about, I keep saying Roblox and Fortnite, that's the ones that everyone's kind of talking about. You probably know far more than you realize, because it's just how you've grown up, and you've probably like done loads of this stuff. But lots of businesses are often run by people who are a lot older than you, and realizing that your generation is the next generation coming through, and actually want to know all the stuff that it doesn't make sense to them, in the same way that when, for me, YouTube started, I kind of saw it making sense, but a lot of people didn't, and I was still learning at the time as well. It's happening again now, so all the skills will be useful. And don't underestimate what you know, because people will find that stuff really valuable. And I think the skills of the future, if we're talking about content making here, and that's kind of my career, but like if it was making videos and YouTube stuff and understanding social media and things like that, for my generation, for your generation, understanding 3D worlds, even a bit of maybe 3D modeling, or why people buy skins in games and things like that, that's kind of the next phase. So that it's kind of an important thing. If you want to move into that world, you might want to do something completely different, and that's absolutely fine as well. But
Brilliant, thank you. Our next question actually kind of leads on to this. So for many of the young people tuning in, they will want to, they'll be interested in being a content creator. So what is your advice on how to make the best content and stand out?
Yes, good question. So I think the biggest part of the battle, which we kind of touched on, is just actually making stuff and putting it out there. Most people, me included, for a long time, overthink everything, right? You want to make the perfect video, so you take ages to make it, and you write your ideas down, and a week later you still haven't done it because other stuff comes up, and you sort of never do it, or you do one and then it was so much effort that you can't be bothered to do another one. And you obviously worry about personal things, right? Which everyone has insecurities about how you look and all those things. So if you want to make content and you want to do that, to try as hard as you can to kind of sort of just make stuff, right? And maybe if you don't even want to put it out there initially, just get in the habit of making stuff, and not being a perfectionist about it. There was a good experiment, I can't remember exactly where it was, and I'll try and not butcher it when I tell it now, but it was an experiment that a scientist did with 2 classes, and it was a photography class, and class A were given the brief to but the goal of it was to create the best photo. And the first group were told to take as many photos as they could over a week. So just take loads and loads of photos and then submit one after all of that. And the second group were told to just learn as much as they could about photography, and then take one photo and submit that. So one group was taking loads, one group was being perfectionist. And basically at the end of the experiment, the group that had the best photos were the ones that just took loads and loads and loads and loads, because even though most of them were rubbish, amongst the rubbish stuff, they'd been learning it and been like practically doing it, and they got really good rather than just learning all the theory. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's kind of the same content creation is you just got to do it. And then you want to try and be smart about it. We talked about like spotting some of those trends, or spotting what people are searching for, and trying to, especially with short form content, if it's like Instagram Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, is really being honest about like, would you watch this, and trying to give people like a hook in the first couple of seconds, because the way that the videos get rated is if people watch the whole way through, then the algorithm goes, oh, this must be a good video, and it shows it to more people. So if you can kind of keep people watching, maybe that's by like asking a question at the beginning that they want to then find out afterwards. Maybe it's with a bit of clever, quick editing, so people are constantly engaged. Those kind of things can kind of help you get watched. and choose a niche, choose a topic, and try and make lots of content about that, and then you become known as the person who knows about that stuff, and people follow you because they know that you're the kind of expert on that. And that might be comedy or might be fun as well. It doesn't always have to be like serious stuff. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Really great advice, I think. I liked especially the example you gave with, make lots of examples, like with the photographs. I think that's a really good thing just in general as well. It can be applied to a lot of different scenarios, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll just move on to the student Q&A. We've had a fair few questions come in anonymously. So if there are any other schools out there who want to submit, please do, and mention your school name too, so you can get a shout out. But the anonymous question, what's been the biggest challenge in your career so far?
Yeah, really good question. Biggest challenge, I think it's about keeping going, because if you choose, like, everyone says follow your passion, which you absolutely should do, because I always think naturally you work far harder at something you want to do versus especially something that somebody else wants you to do, whether that's your parents or your friend or whatever. You definitely go after what you love. If it's something creative like content creation, the challenge is keeping going, like we were saying, because it's not like a normal job where you get paid a certain amount every month and you turn up at certain hours and you know what's happening over like the course of a year or something. It's very up and down. And that's fine if you know that and if you're aware of that and if you can deal with that. And it's not for everyone, because some people find that really stressful and they don't like it and would prefer to be able to turn up at certain hours and get paid and then not take all of their work home with them and stuff. And that's totally fine as well. If you're more that personality and you prefer that and it makes you happy to do that, because that's what you should do. But yes, so that's been difficult, and you have lots of mini breaks where you think you've kind of made it for a bit, and then that kind of cools down, like you do a job for a certain amount of months and then it ends, right? And you have to kind of pick yourself up and go again. So it's a lot of that. So that's kind of the hardest thing. But if you love it, it's kind of part of the challenge and you sort of enjoy the journey. And okay, some days you wake up and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing today. I don't really have a job, but I'm just going to make content, because the more I make, the more people will see it, the more that job will come in. So yeah, it's a different style of working and living. And also, you don't get loads of holidays and stuff like that because there's no one to cover you. If you're a content creator and you want to go away for a week, you can't really not make content because no one else can do it for you. So there's things to think about like that, which make it difficult. But yeah.
No, that's grand. So you're talking about, it takes like a different type of, or like a personality type for content creating, someone who can deal with uncertainty maybe, but it's the love of it that keeps you going, which is great. Yeah. Oakley School has asked, how do you make money by podcasting?
Yes, great question as well. These are really good. So at the beginning, you probably won't, because people won't know you exist if you put up a podcast immediately. It takes time for people to find it, and you have to do some work to kind of get it in front of the right people and or hit a trend that people are searching for. So I would expect to not make money for a decent amount of time. It depends how hard you kind of work on it. But the ways you do make money is generally by sponsorship. So for me, I was doing all these interviews with people about the metaverse, and I interviewed a CEO at a company that I thought were really interesting. And I just emailed them, and I was like, "Would you come on the podcast?" And she was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." And we had a really good interview, and I kept in touch with her. And then slowly, she was like, "Oh, actually, we would like to sponsor the podcast." So then I would come up with an advert to read for them about what they were doing, and I'd start every show with be like, "Oh, by the way, this company are doing this," and they pay me to do that. So generally through adverts is how you get paid. That's pretty much the model for all podcasts, really. But it's good because if you do continue to grow it, you're doing the same amount of work. If you're making a 1 hour show a week, and at the beginning you have 100 listeners, you won't make any money. Then when you get to 1,000, maybe you can have a small sponsor. Then if you get to 10,000, 50,000, you're still making 1 hour of content, but actually you can make lots more money because as your audience grows, it's worth more to brands, but you're still doing 1 hour of a show every week. So it can be really good over time.
Amazing. That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Brooklands College has asked, what made you want to get into podcasting rather than the traditional radio direction?
Yeah, so I did do radio and I started there and I loved it, and radio is amazing. It's cool, and yeah, I did some stuff at Radio One, so I covered some shows there and still do various things there, and that was a real like buzz because it's live, and yeah, you put up the mic and all these people are hearing you. Like I almost fainted the first time I did it because it is crazy and it's a real buzz. And yeah, I think Radio One's amazing, and there's lots of good radio stations. As an industry, it's kind of I would say like shrinking a bit because we now all have phones and you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to content whenever you want, and also it's fighting now against YouTube podcasts and on-demand services. So it's like a slightly smaller industry now, so it's not really growing like it used to. So I was like, do I want to be part of an industry that is kind of shrinking a bit, or step into a new world that's very early, like virtual worlds and gaming and stuff, and metaverse stuff that's growing? I was like, I want to be there early rather than maybe some of that shrinking. That doesn't mean it's not valuable, doesn't mean it's not fun, doesn't mean it's not bad, but there's not that many shows there as well, so it's quite hard, and some of it's out of your control. So I kind of like did as much as I could there, and I was like, actually, I think I'm gonna move to somewhere that's like early but growing is what I thought. It's an amazing thing, radio for sure.
Brilliant, thank you. Totton College have just asked, do you ever get writer's block with content or stuck for ideas?
Yeah, 100%. Everybody does. That's like a really normal human thing. You can't sort of, like you want to be creative, and you can't return it on like just be like, oh, I'm going to be creative now. Like sometimes it doesn't really come right. But I remember reading something that Ed Sheeran mentioned when he was like writing songs, was that like creativity is a bit like turning on a tap, and you have to let all the kind of dirty rubbish water flow out first until you get to the good stuff. And so when we're talking about just making content as well, sometimes you just have to get through that phase of rubbish ideas, write all your rubbish ideas down, and just get them out, and then they're not in your head anymore, and you can start looking at them and being like, oh, okay, how can I use that to come up with new stuff? So a lot of people will like sit for 5-10 minutes and be like, I can only think of rubbish ideas, I must be not a creative person. Like that's definitely not true. It's just about getting that stuff out and keeping going. Yeah, and also we won't talk about loads now, but a big shift for you, which I think will be massive and will affect you a lot, is artificial intelligence stuff that's coming. I don't know if anyone's heard of ChatGPT, but it's a website you can go on, maybe check with your parents, but it's something that a lot of people are using. But it's an amazing, like you write in a text into it, and it's like Google, but it's like having a personal assistant. And I have used that for stuff. You get stuck on an idea, I wouldn't want to use exactly what it said. It's like having another person that you can bounce off. So that's like another phase of stuff that's coming that's interesting. But yeah, just try and work through it, or go for a walk, or do something that gets you out of your space. The best ideas come when you're sort of going for a walk, or in the shower, or just as you're falling asleep and you have to write them down often. But yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great advice. Thank you, Luke. We've had a question coming from the Deferers Academy. Do you think there are any good courses to help with podcasting, either in university or further education, like college courses maybe?
Yeah, I'm sure there 100% are. I've not got any to mind at the moment. I didn't do like an official course on it at all. I just kind of learned by doing at uni. There was this volunteer radio station, but I'm sure, yeah, there will be loads, and yeah, I'm sure if you go on the university websites and search for that stuff, like that's great. YouTube's also an amazing resource. Like you'll know already, but you can get the basics of stuff on YouTube for a lot of media things, and just by listening and seeing how other people kind of construct their shows. Like you can listen to a podcast and just enjoy it, which you should, and not think about it. But if you're interested in podcasting, listening and just maybe making notes as you listen about how they do stuff. So like, how long is their intro? Is it like 5 minutes, and is it long and boring, or is it probably quite quick? And they might even start with like a hook from the show. If it's an interview, they probably start with 10 seconds of like the juiciest bit of the interview, or the most exciting thing that makes you want to listen more. So that's like a cool thing to just note down and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so you can listen in kind of two ways, and you should do both. Listen to enjoy, but also if you're interested, listen and maybe write notes as well to see how people are doing it well. But yeah.
Brilliant. So you yourself got into podcasting sort of by helping on the radio station at university, so that's another great way to get into things, into the sector. Helen has asked, how much of your podcast is scripted?
Cool, good question. Yeah, so I script the introduction. So I generally start with a hook, like we were saying. So from the interview, I'll cut out a few seconds that hopefully makes people want to listen to the main bit of it. So I start there, and that's the first thing you hear. And then I have an introduction, which I script because I just want to make sure that I get the guest's name right and their job. And also, I want to make it pacey, but kind of set up the show just quickly so people kind of have some context. And to do that on the fly can get a bit confusing. So I script the intro. I have also written all the podcast questions before and sent them to the guests so that they know what's coming. People do it lots of different ways. That's how I do it. So I have the questions scripted, but they often go completely off. Well, so it's a bit like anything, like even an exam or anything. You want to plan, or maybe not an exam, maybe a presentation. You want to plan as much as you can to make sure you're not going in with like nothing. But also you don't want to kind of over plan for a presentation because it might go slightly different to how you thought. So if it's really scripted and you only reading what's in front of you, if they kind of throw you a question or something, it can kind of throw the whole thing up. So you want to be able to be flexible as well in the presentation. So that's the intro and the questions, and then we just go from there, really. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question from Totton College. How do you go about building up an audience for your podcasts?
Yeah, good one. So we talked about a couple of ways there, but getting guests is great. It takes a bit of time and it is a bit of effort, and you will like get to the point where you're like, this is annoying because you have to kind of every week find a new guest or however many times you want to do it. But that's great because they'll have an audience themselves. So you're not just relying on who's seeing your stuff. If they can post it out on their social media or tell their friends and family about it, that's kind of using their audience, especially if they are like someone quite well known or someone who's a bit of an expert. So that's a great way to build an audience. We were talking about like finding a niche or a trend, either that's at the beginning and people are probably going to search for, because then they'll naturally find you from searching for it. And you can look at, there's a thing called Google Trends where you can put a term in and see how many people are looking for it. And that's kind of helpful. So yeah, and if you're like saying a niche, if you've got something that you're an expert in or you've got a cool opinion on, that stands you out from other people. And then I think that's, if you're on social media, then it's great to try and post out and also reply to other people in your world, right? If it's an example, if you're doing a football podcast, follow other football podcasts, reply to other people who are talking about football, maybe even send them like a snippet of your show to kind of get it out there. And then as they kind of share it, it sort of grows as a network. But it takes time as well. It will take a bit of time, and you should like expect that, because that's normal. And everyone who started from 0 followers, and you have to kind of grow. But yeah, just keep going is the thing.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question from the Deferers Academy: who has inspired you?
Oh yeah, good one. Who's inspired me? Lots of people. I think anyone who's really relentlessly like kind of the job they really want to do and has been knocked down a lot and got back up again, which is a lot of people, like a lot of presenters and like friends that I know. Look, you often only see, because they post about it, their highlights reel, as we all know, on like social media. But so many people have had periods where it's been quiet, or they were about to get a job that then fell apart at the last minute and stuff like that. But I don't know if it's one. I'd love to give like a really good answer of an amazing person, but I can't think of any one person. But yeah, it's probably not really famous people as well. It's probably bits wishy-washy. Like my girlfriend is amazing because she also helps me not get too wrapped up in thinking about numbers of a podcast or what other people. This measure of success shouldn't necessarily be about followers and stuff. It's nice that people like your work, but there's other important things as well. So sorry, that's not a great answer, but I'll have a think and I'll try and come back to you. But it's a good question. So you did well, but I didn't.
No, that was a great answer. To continue sort of in this vein, Peerview Academy has asked, what has kept you going when everything seems too much?
Yeah, another good one. I always wanted to do a job that was fun. I think without getting sort of too deep, you're kind of here once, and for me and my brain, I know I'm not very good at my personality, which will be different from lots of you, so not everyone's this way. But I just was so determined to want to wake up and do a job that was fun, because it's going to take up quite a lot of my time, and you're only here once. So I was like, that's a decision that I kind of made, and I stuck to it. So I think there's definitely difficult times. It's definitely hard, and work isn't always there. But I kind of have that in the back of my mind and be like, well, yeah, you know, just I just want to do that. So I'm going to, however hard it is, I'm just not going to give up and keep going. But also sometimes you need help as well. Sometimes you need to ask for help, and you know, a lot of you will have your own mental health journeys, whether that is anxiety, or for me it's been with OCD, which is another whole conversation. But there are points where you can't do everything on your own. So being able to speak to tell someone about that if you are struggling is really important as well. Like you can be as determined as you want, and that's a great trait, but it's also absolutely fine to ask for help if you're struggling, and you should do that, and that can really help you put you back on the right path. So yeah, friends, family, and you know, professionals for that, which I did and have done in the past as well, is really important. You shouldn't have to take everything out on your own as well.
Brilliant, Luke. No, that's grand. So your determination plus support sometimes, which is can be key. Yeah. Thank you. Countess Thorpe Academy has asked, what tech is required if you're starting out in podcasting? So tech that our young people might have.
Yeah, for sure. So here's a good little tip. So if you have got headphones, even if they are like normal headphones, and they hopefully have got a mic, maybe they're AirPods or maybe they're just normal headphones, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Record it on them, and then there is a tool which you can use online. If you search Adobe Podcast AI, maybe we can put it in the notes afterwards or something. There's a tool basically where you can take some audio which will sound won't sound perfect to begin with, but you can run it through this AI. I won't explain how it works mainly because I don't really know. But it makes it sound like a studio quality, which is amazing. It's amazing. It's really, really good. So I'd say do that if you don't want to, you know, initially buy a mic. There's some that aren't really expensive, but you can try it this way because it works really, really well. Lots of people have begun to kind of talk about it and stuff. So maybe we can link that. And so then for your mic, that's kind of the main thing you need. And that's kind of it. You might need some editing software. There's another one called Audacity, which is free. You can download it on whatever computer you have. There'll be some phone apps now as well. You could even record it on your phone and then use this AI to make it sound better. So it's pretty it's simple to start that. You edit it, you export it as an MP3, and then there's a platform to get it out to all the podcast places. So it appears on Apple and Spotify, called Anchor. It's made by Spotify and it's free as well. So then you've got you can record it, you can use a free software to make it sound better, and you can use a free software to get your podcast out to the world. So you could do it without spending any money, certainly to begin with, to see if you really like it. And then if you want to kind of level up a little bit, then maybe you can think about filming episodes as well, and expanding it that way. But yeah, you can definitely start and make it really good for free.
Brilliant. Those links have been posted, so thank you for those. That's great.
Cool.
Another question from Helen. As an author, what kind of things do you prefer to write, and which medium do you prefer, writing or podcasting? And do you find that the two overlap much?
Yeah, so yeah, I've also written a couple of kids' novels. They're called Jamie McFlair versus the Boy Band Generator is the first novel. It's for slightly younger age groups, so kind of 8+ they call it, middle grades. And it's the story of these 4 girls who are love this internet boy band, and they get invited onto a talent show, a bit like kind of the X Factor or BGT days, but the person who runs it is quite evil and has a machine and he's created every boy band you've ever seen on the telly secretly and put them on his own show. That's the idea of the book. It's completely ridiculous. but yeah, so I'd never written it before that. So me and my best friend at uni, who we did radio stuff together, we wrote this book. And again, when we started it, we wrote a first draft and we took it to somebody, and there was good parts of it, but it wasn't really a story. And we had to go through the process of learning what makes a good story. So we basically like written this idea we had, and it was lots of events that were happening that were funny, but there was no like reasons for the characters to do things. So like, why would they actually do that? I mean, so we had to kind of build all these stories around characters, which was amazing and really cool. It was long, and you go through lots and lots of edits, about 6 edits. So if you've ever written like, anything, whether it's essay or something, and then someone comes back and it's like, change this. It was a lot, and it was hard, but it was a great thing to learn, because if you can learn how to tell a story and what gets people hooked and engaged, and maybe what affects them emotionally in a good way, like you begin to, like any film you've watched or Disney film or whatever, they're amazing at making you care about the characters and care about what they're doing, even though 5 minutes before you start the film you had no idea about any of their story. So that's a really good skill to have. So I'm really glad we did it. And that probably, when you're saying about does that kind of cross over with other things, the idea of storytelling and learning how to tell a good story is an amazing skill to have in whatever you do. Because if you go into, even if you have an interview and they ask you to tell them about yourself, like being able to kind of tell them a bit of your own life story, or if you go into like, I don't know, marketing or something, and even, if you work in advertising, you're selling a product, like every advert you see will be telling a story of some sort. So that's probably the theme, and that's a good thing to kind of research. And there's lots of good stuff online about how to tell good stories and what makes other people engage with you. And yeah, so that is probably the thing that's kind of follows throughout all of content creation as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So Alfred Academy asks, what are the best subjects to study to support this career? So what did you study in high school and maybe at university?
Yeah, so I kind of followed just what I liked. I wasn't thinking too hard about it at school. I only really found out about content creation when I chose to go to university. But so yeah, A levels, I think I did like business studies. I did PE or sports science, and I did biology. So quite random. I quite liked like learning about the body and stuff like that, and I enjoyed sport. And then at university, I chose psychology, which I found really, really hard. I didn't quite get on with the course, and that's partly why I went and spent a lot of time doing the radio, was because I wasn't very happy in university. I wasn't really enjoying it, but I managed to find something else that I enjoyed. Subjects wise, I think for kind of media and whether it's telly or content creation or whatever, there's no rules really. Like it, unless you maybe if you want to be a journalist, and maybe if you love kind of news and you love reporting more kind of factual things, a journalism course might suit you, because there's certain skills you need to learn about, like what you can and can't say in those kind of situations where it's more serious. Otherwise, it's the stuff you're learning at school is really important. All the skills you're kind of learning there will help you, but there's no specific subject. And the main thing is to take action and kind of make stuff, as I was saying, and just get in the habit of creating stuff, because that's how you learn really. But yeah, so but even things like at school, like if you're doing English and you're learning to kind of hit deadlines and stuff as well, that's an important skill for content creation, because if you're trying to put content out, you need to know how to kind of hit a deadline, get stuff done. So all of these bigger skills you're learning as well, but there's no specific subjects. It's more about sort of taking action and just making stuff, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I guess we'll have our last question. What would make you stand out as an actor, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I've done a bit of acting. So I did this kids show it's called Scrambled. It was a kids show on CITV, and we did a lot of like silly characters. So it was a lot of kind of silly acting. I remember one of my characters was Donald Trump's, who was dressed as Donald Trump, and then I'd have to mime farting songs, which somebody would play on a keyboard, the fart noises in the tune of a popular song, like a Shawn Mendes song or something, and then the audience would have to guess what it was. Very highbrow, very serious stuff. Can you call that acting? Don't know, I guess so, but ridiculous. And then I did do some stuff for there's a show called I Hate Susie, which was a big production with Billy Piper on Sky. So I have delved into that world a little bit. What makes you stand out? I don't know so much from like an acting point of view, but I think part of the challenge now is people are looking at your, not just your following, but kind of what your audience basically. So if you are doing other stuff, so if you wanted to be an actor, but you also had a podcast about something, or you also have a YouTube channel, and they can maybe see you in action, that helps because it's easier to kind of show someone what you do versus just telling them. If you're writing on an email or whatever, like, I'm a really good actor, they're like, okay, but if you have a YouTube channel where you're doing maybe comedy acting or whatever it is, and you can be like, I'm a good actor and here's loads of videos of me acting, then that will probably help you stand out, I would say. So yeah, again, it's about kind of making stuff. Yeah, it's a slightly different world, acting, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you, Luke. You've covered a broad spectrum in this so far, so thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our students. Would you have any closing comments to leave our audience with?
Yeah, great questions. Thanks so much for all of those. And I think like my final thoughts is people, you should follow something you love, because you're only here once, and you will work harder at something you enjoy. You also have to think about a smart way to do that if you want to make that a career. So half of that is just keeping going and keeping making stuff, whatever anybody says, and then a bit of that is thinking about how can you get in front of people and show them, and maybe latch onto a new trend that's coming, or a niche that people aren't talking about, and separate yourself a little bit as well, I would say. But yeah, it's definitely doable is the other thing. The first thing I remember when I was talking about I wanted to be a presenter, the thing everybody says is it's very competitive, which is true, but also so is everything that you might want to do. Everything's competitive, and that shouldn't stop you, and people do it. So if it's something you really feel inside you want to do, go for it 100%. Yeah, and hopefully it's been a great chat. So thank you very much for having me. Hopefully that is helpful, and yeah, good luck and keep going.